a Bitcoin versus a group of altcoins. What is actually better for the short term, aka this cycle, versus the long term? If we were to buy and hodl, or also buy, sell, compound over the next 6 years. Based on that and risk, what's a better choice? And actually, this is a very important question to answer, I believe, right now, aside from a fun little concept, because as you'll see in a second, this is actually something that you can consider doing right now. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. That'll make sense in a few minutes here. But again, now is actually an important time to weigh this up for a lot of you as well, considering actually following through with this, especially if you hold a bunch of Bitcoin and you're like, should I keep this Bitcoin for the long term, or should I sell all of it or some of it for these altcoins or other altcoins? Now, before I get into it, and trust me, we're going to actually answer this properly with math, based on history and all the rest of it. All I ask in return is if you do find yourself enjoying this, to help support all I do over here by hitting that like button down there. It really makes my day, guys. Truly, it does. And hit the subscribe button as well so you can achieve all your crypto goals in this bull run, and as we'll see in a second here, in perpetuity as well. So, again, you're asking the question, Kyron, why the hell are you even comparing these particular altcoins to Bitcoin? Why not any other 3 random altcoins? Well, one Bitcoin right now is about $66,000. If you were to buy the exact amounts I'm talking about today, you'd have about $28,000. So I know that's about, 2.5 times smaller. We'll look at some comparisons more so in a second here, but I think those of you considering, again, what I just mentioned moments ago, where you want to maybe sell a portion of your Bitcoin and hold some of it and buy altcoins, well, this might make more sense to you rather than comparing $66,000 of Bitcoin, aka one coin, versus $66,000 of these. So that might make some more sense here, all right? Now, Bitcoin is, naturally speaking, long-term orientated, whereas these obviously are theoretically, and I guess what the market and everyone sort of suspects to be short-term orientated. Bitcoin's obviously seen as safer. These are seen as more risky inherently, all right? Bitcoin's number one altcoin, but these are in very powerful narratives, okay? This is what I've identified, of course, in my bull run cheat sheet, and these are all in the top-ranking narratives, all right? Interoperability, gaming, all these up here, right, they hit it, okay? As I said, real-world assets, AI, DePIN, Web3, Layer 1. They are all going to be massive, massive components of what succeeds in this bull run. So I figured that'd be a very, very good example versus the number one asset, I think, of all time, at least as time progresses. Now, like I said, we have the alternative thing we have to consider here. I know this is so boring, and it's risk. Yes, inherently, Bitcoin is less risky, but there is not a such thing as 0% risk in any market. Bitcoin actually, according to my multiples sheet over here, it's actually still a 10% risk, whereas these are probably more so trading on about a 30% risk because they pretty much can 15x from the current price, okay? If not even a little bit more, I think 15x kind of covers most bases. So yes, there is inherent risk with both of these, except again, just because these can give you more multiples, there is more of a chance that somewhere along the line, they fall off with the market and it doesn't go up or whatever reason. Now, I've chosen these 3 altcoins specifically because not just they're going to be good for this cycle, but as we'll see later on, they're actually going to be good in the next 6 years, maybe even longer. They have actual teams and they are actual businesses behind the scenes. Unlike 98, I would say maybe even 99% of the crypto market, they're all just a facade. They're all just here to try to make you buy the coin, and it's going to make the founders and VCs rich. So these 3 I've discerned to be quite good altcoins. The question is, how do they compare? Let's look at the short term first. This might be a more obvious answer, okay? So Render over here, we can expect Render to be about $100 or more this cycle, I think conservatively. A 13x is definitely on the cards from this current price, whereas Bitcoin right now, probably 150K, if not a bit more, which is about a 2x. Now, yes, we're going to make arguments in a second here for Bitcoin going up to 300K. It's definitely possible. Again, Render can even go up to $200. This is a more so conservative outlook. And as we can see here, the current price performance in the last 12 months, well, Render is beating Bitcoin by about a 2x. Okay, so obviously this bull run, being an altcoin, it's obviously gained a lot more. Plus also it's more relevant. AI and DePIN are very, very popular narratives. And I believe there will continue to be popular narratives moving into the next cycle as well, because AI will pretty much be at a whole new dimension in the next 6 years. All right, it's really going to change the world as we know it. Now, ICP is a bit of a different case. Yes, it's DePIN, yes, it's AI, but it's mainly focused as a Web3 Layer 1 infrastructure project. Don't get me wrong, though, this has been performing very well this cycle. It has been brought down a lot recently, which actually is a very good buy time for me. We are just under Bitcoin right now in terms of overall gains from the last 12 months. but I still see ICP going up to above $150, which is actually a 16x, which is a bit more than Render, because again, I believe we've dipped down right now to a fantastic entry level. And again, Bitcoin's the same goal. And lastly, Ondo, this coin is very new. It's not even 12 months old, and it's performing by far the best. It's actually up an 13x rather, and I think it can go up to $12, all right? If we come down a bit more, it'd be a really good time to get in. But again, I think $12 could definitely be exceeded here. That's at 11x from the current price. And as you can see, it's pretty much making Bitcoin look like a flat stick right now. So comparably, pulling very, very well. So let's average out the results, all right? So looking at Bitcoin, well, it's actually up about 150%. I see it going between a 2x, which is on the low side or probably average side, up to a possible 5x. That's $132,000 from the current price to $330,000. As we'll see, a lot of these experts actually predict based on models, Bitcoin to exceed $250,000 this cycle. I'm going to see it. When I see it, I'm going to believe it, basically. Whereas versus these altcoins, on average, they're up 550%. I think a 10x on the low side from the current prices to a 20x on average. That pretty much means from $28,000 investment, that's $280,000 to $560,000. Now, we aren't going to convert it. We're not going to look at what $66,000 would look like if you were to invest in these coins, but pretty much just 2.5 times this and 2.5 times this. Okay, so you'd have over $1 million here and obviously over $500,000 here. Now, the thing is, we'll look at what this looks like as that $66,000 at the end of the video. But I think short term, again, people kind of want to, as far as I'm concerned, if they do hold a single Bitcoin, they wouldn't want to probably sell an entire Bitcoin this cycle. A lot of people, if they have a decent entry price, would probably prefer to hold on a little bit of the coin and maybe speculate on, again, 25% or 33% of the coin in some of these altcoins, again, for just these higher multiples. So again, I wouldn't deem there to be a huge safety difference between the two assets for this cycle. So in my opinion, if you're going to choose one or the other, again, even if you had less money invested in these alts, I think these alts particularly would be the better suited choice for this cycle. Not financial advice. Alrighty, well, so what about the long-term coin? Well, let's look at two different aspects here. Let's look at buying and hodling. So buying now and selling in 2030, and buying now, selling in 2025, buying back in the next bear market, then selling again in 2030. So that's multi-cycle compounding, a plan and strategy I've been trying to teach people a lot on this channel. So make sure you're subscribed, damn it, because I'll tell you what right now, you don't hear this anywhere else. And this will actually ease your mind when you see this, just how much money you need to make, you can make, and only get a small amount of multiples to be safe this cycle. Ignore the 30, 40x's this cycle, guys. Get a safe 5, 10, 15x. Make the big money next time around, okay? So buy and hodl first. Well, we'll start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as you should all know, has some incredible predictions for 2030. Cathie Wood, a pretty psychopathic prediction, to be honest with you. But in saying that, the ETFs are around with net inflows already being $15.6 billion. To only imagine what happens in the next bear market when things probably take a pretty steep turn, I think, in any direction as the world's heading, right? Could be very, very good for Bitcoin. $2.3 million by 2030. Jack Dorsey, above $1 million, and everything in between. We've got massive predictions from some of these ETF managers saying above $1 million, right? Definitely above $1 million is the way to go. Some of these tools as well that we've been using since the beginning of Bitcoin's time indicates by the rainbow chart at least 2030, $600K to $1 million in this range. And also, of course, the stock to flow model by Plan B, $4 to $5 million. Even if it goes 25% of that or 30% of that, it's still going to be incredible, okay? So I think based on average here, what we can do is look at 2030, $1 million Bitcoin price, right? So if you bought today, where we are currently right now, in this little sort of, all-time high sideways action, you buy one at $66,000 or whatever, you might hold one Bitcoin right now, okay? Even if you bought down here and you look to sell in 2030, that's obviously $1 million. And admittedly, it's the lower average of those predictions, okay? So you're 15xing, not too shabby for 6 years. That is 1,400%. I don't think any traditional investor would ever complain with that. So what about these three? Well, if you were to buy $28,000 today, you'd get, again, 10,000 Ondo, 1,000 ICP, 1,000 Render. Essentially, this would turn into about $555,000 in 2030. So you're 20xing, which honestly, considering this is a 20x and this was a 15x, that's not too bad if you ask me. So just hodling, okay? You get the sort of, I guess, secure peace of mind with Bitcoin where you don't kind of have to check back into crypto and kind of worry. You can just literally buy Bitcoin today, put it in an account. In 6 years, check back, and you're pretty well going to rest assured the whole entire time. You're going to have nights where you're going to sleep pretty well. Whereas these three coins, admittedly, even if it was me knowing how good these coins really are, I would still probably check back from time to time and check how they were going in a fundamental aspect, not in terms of price. Of course, price will decrease in the interim, but sort of towards the end. Now, we can see here the prices I've used are actually very conservative. What I've done here is look at what a conservative price prediction will be for this cycle, which again was the ones I mentioned before, at $12 over here for Ondo, about $150 here for ICP, and about $100 there for RNDR, and then just do 50% of that gain. So they're not even 2xing from the all-time highs over here and there. So that's very, very conservative in my opinion, and we're walking away with 555K. So yeah, you can argue this probably could be maybe a 25x, if not a lot more, to be honest, and I wouldn't be surprised to say that as well. However, again, just to be on the safe side, considering things can happen, they are businesses first. Bitcoin is more of a commodity, if you will. Anything can happen. So if you ask me, and we'll analyze this again in a moment, I think that for the HODL mentality, Bitcoin's probably the right choice. Considering, again, you can make a lot more money with those altcoins, but again, for the peace of mind, for someone looking for that particular type of investment, I think Bitcoin wins. So right now, I think altcoin short-term, Bitcoin HODL for long-term. Let's work out compound for long-term. So Bitcoin, first of all, one thing we have to remember here is that at the previous all-time high, Bitcoin has in the past found that as support, or at least to some degree, okay? So if I pull this chart up here, we can see that at the current, previous all-time high, we're currently out there right now, okay, $69,000-ish. But have a look at the last cycle, right? What happened back here? Well, we have found this as pretty much support, right? This was about $19,000 back in 2018. We pretty much landed there. If it wasn't for all those bank collapses in the US, we probably would have just touched that line and then headed back up again. We've seen this in the past as well. Same sort of thing, if not actually a little bit more. So again, even better in this case for Bitcoin's sake, and way back initially as well. Huge gap here indeed. But lately it's been kind of fizzling down as, of course, the Bitcoin price and market sort of expands, gets longer, and also we can see that returns diminishing over time. First cycle, second cycle, third cycle, fourth cycle was a bit of a weird one. So yes, we can see over here returns do diminish over time. But this actually plays a negative impact in terms of this particular strategy as well. If you're someone buying now and holding for the long term, it's fine, because you can pretty well say, well, historically, Bitcoin won't fall too much lower than this price. Again, it might wick down, come back up for a little bit, but hey, this is still a pretty good price, okay? But because it's not really falling down as heavy as altcoins typically do, around 90-95%, we get no benefit buying back in again, so following this compound plan. So again, if we kind of look at the 6-year time span here, we buy one Bitcoin today, okay? We look to sell the one Bitcoin in 2025, which might go to a price of 350K, but let's be conservative and say we get out at 200K, we make 200K. And then in 2028, we again buy back in. However, again, we can assume that Bitcoin won't go too much lower than today's price. So basically what we're looking at here essentially is the lows, and we buy as much as we can then because we have more money. We'll have to keep 50K aside for tax. So we buy as much Bitcoin as we can for the remaining money we have. 150K, we therefore buy 2.3 Bitcoin, 2.3 times $1 million, because I'm expecting, not $4, I'm expecting Bitcoin to go, again, based on the previous responses, about $1 million, if not maybe more by 2030. So that's 2.3 mil. That's a 35x. You can see why compounding is even more powerful with the case of Bitcoin, where it's pretty much hitting the same price of buying at today, okay, in those 2 years. We're still 35x versus a 15x by just hodling. So that plan itself is much, much better in my opinion. So even if you are a passive investor, if you can kind of loosely do this, you're winning. Okay, you are winning. Again, that's to say that Bitcoin goes to at least the same price as of today. All right. If it goes a lot more, maybe not. But what about these three coins and compounding? Well, again, you have to remember these are actually businesses. So they actually can, I believe, last until the next bull run at least, probably even further. We have RNDR over here being governed by the, a toy, which is his parent company. Okay, these have some massive advisors. I've made many videos on this. Also a video recently on Ondo talking about the team. Very powerful people. Also, they've pretty much tokenized, or at least using, BlackRock's tokenized fund, which required a sign-off from BlackRock. So there's a very, very good thing there. And the largest research and development team in crypto, one of my most bullish parts of ICP. They have 100,000 citations and 250 patents. Amazingly huge team full of very special people. So again, I think that these are three projects that can last the test of time. So doing what I'm about to tell you now, I think is definitely possible with this. So to cut a very long story short, again, today you buy the same amount before, $28,000, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think, again, looking at prices like this in 2025 is definitely on the cards, very easy to obtain, I think, in terms of a price prediction. But again, let's be pessimistic and say we get out at a bit cheaper prices. I think this will definitely be hit on financial advice. Therefore, let's assume that in 2025, we make $310,000. Again, following the principle of these moving down 90%, unlike Bitcoin, we get these prices here. So pretty much a bit more expensive than today's prices. We then, of course, have the chance to put in $230K. Again, we're keeping $80K for tax and other things. We pretty much can reinvest and buy 51,000 Ondo, 4,000 ICP, and almost 6,000 render, which means, again, ignore this, we can basically, again, at these prices, which is only 50% higher than their all-time highs over here. Okay, so again, very poor performance. On the low side, we get almost $8 million, so 100x basically, which is insane. And you got to remember, we started off with 28,000, not 66,000 like Bitcoin. So long term, Bitcoin will probably range around 1 million on the low side. Again, this is non-compounding to compounding price of 2.3 mil, roughly speaking, again, at the price goes to 1 million versus these three, $28,000. You're looking at $500,000 to 2.7 million. Kind of crazy when you think about it. Again, this might come, again, the multi-cycle compounding plan with a little bit more, I guess, involvement in the market. And again, you might be a little bit more hesitant to even look at the long-term hold over here because it's more involved. You're going to be more panicked versus Bitcoin. So that trade-off, in my opinion, might be favored towards Bitcoin. However, when you mark up and actually buy $66,000 at today's prices of these coins, not 28,000, then the gains kind of start speaking for themselves, and you actually might therefore consider being a bit more involved in the market for a higher upside, okay? $6 million, this is US, by the way. That is no joke. And even if we fall somewhere in between, say 4 million, that's pretty incredible for a 66K investment. So in my opinion, Ondo, ICP, and Render are all coins that will succeed in the next 6 years. Therefore, it does make sense to hedge into them for maximum gains. But BTC surprisingly holds its own in terms of gains. I am actually quite surprised at how impressive these gains are. And considering how safe it is, and that it could one day be, digital gold officially, there's a strong reason to choose Bitcoin over these three altcoins. In my opinion, Bitcoin is set and forget retirement fund, and these are for the compound kid, right? Like me, a compound kid. I want to get in there. I'm nice and young. I can afford to wait this time and afford the stress to be a multimillionaire in the next 6 years, basically, right? So take them as you will. It wouldn't surprise me if someone decides non-financially to hold some Bitcoin and also hold some of these altcoins and make that trade-off somewhere in between, at least right now. Because right now is a pretty good time to do so on the current dip. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. Again, if you've made it this far, you got to tell me you like this sort of content by hitting the like button down there. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you for watching. Talk soon. Take care. Bye.